Welcome everyone. Welcome to this new edition of our presentation of the current number of Temes de Disseny. And before we start, I would like to just stop sharing my screen so we could see who we are here today. So just to say hi, we have Laura Clarius, we have Andrew Morrison, we have Gim Spelt, and myself. So we are going to be your hosts for tonight, and I hope that you will like the session that we have prepared for you. So don't worry, I will introduce all of them while the time comes because I'm going to be your moderator for today. So let's start. So again, as I just said, so welcome to this presentation of the new number of Temes de Disseny. In this case, it's number 36, and its title is Design Futures Now, Literacies and Making. I just want to introduce myself first. So my name is Oscar Tomico. I'm going to be the moderator for today, and I'm like the head of the design engineering program at Elisava. I'm also an assistant professor at the Eindhoven University of Technology and co-director of the program Design for Emerging Futures that we do together between EAC and Elisava. And it happens that I'm also one of the editors-in-chief of this magazine together with Laura Clarius, who I'm going to introduce later on. So Temes de Disseny, as you can see in this photo, has changed a lot since Laura and me started being the editors of this journal. The journal now really wants to show what is cutting-edge research in the fields of design and design engineering, and especially focused to give a voice to what we call, and it's really important for us, research through design. So what you're going to see here, it's in these magazines, you're going to see a compilation of articles where most of them, design action, it's used as a way of creating knowledge. And we think that this is also a valuable way of doing research in this field. Temes de Disseny is an academic journal. It's an open access scientific journal, as it's written here. And all the articles have been peer reviewed by multiple sources 2 times. And also, this journal includes different kinds of publications, from more like the traditional research papers, to state-of-the-art contributions, and also what we call case studies and pictorials, where the images and the work done are hand by hand with the text and the description. So Temes de Disseny has one number each year, and each year touches a topic that we think it's relevant to work. So 2 years ago, we work on material interactions in this new human-made world. Last year, we worked on AI and emerging digital technologies as a design material. And this year, we are going to be working on, or we are going to be showing you the number that we worked on that's called Design Futures Now, Literacies and Making. Sorry for that. I was checking now. Actually, what I was doing is I was checking the description or the short bio that I have from Laura and Andrew, which I'm going to just quickly show you. So Laura Clarius, as I said before, she's also the co-editor-in-chief of this journal. But I think it would be good to know a bit more about her. So Laura is a designer, a strategic design researcher, editor, and curator in transformative innovation through design research-led strategic foresight. And she has a specific focus on materials. She holds extensive international academic and work experience in industry with Knocker Implant, Zara Home, and academia, University of London, NYU, University of Alabama, University of Toronto, IET, and Elisava, and in think tanks like Pantone Color Planner or WGSN. Her current research work focuses on futures research methodologies as well as materials innovation. She's currently a professor and head of the research at Elizabeth School of Design and Engineering, as well as the director of the master's degree in design through new materials. So hi, Laura.
Hi, Oscar. Thanks for the introduction. And
I hope I
really
read
happy.
it.
Yeah, you did. You did. Thanks. I was overwhelmed. Thank you.
Well, it's impressive.
Hi, everyone.
And I also want to introduce Andrew Morrison, who's is the director of the Center of Design Research at Oslo School of Architecture and Design. Leads design research projects on communication and interaction design, collaborating on service, systems, and product design. He works on design writing, fiction, and criticism, and design and technology critiques, and collaborates with the Institute of Urbanism and Landscape at AHO. His current work centers on design critical futures in an anticipation frame. He publishes in digital media, multiliteracies, interaction and urbanism, landscape, and Arctic and scholarly communication. He has coordinated the AHO PDH school and has supervised and examined and reviewed widely research. So this is like a short introduction for the two of them. And now I will pass the word to them to actually explain us what this number is about. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Oscar. Andrew, you want to go ahead?
Yes, welcome everybody. It's great you could join us. And thanks very much to colleagues at Elisava for this very warm welcome, and also to our managing editor, Gim Espelt, without whom this wouldn't have happened. So I'm just acknowledging how things get done, and I always like to put that up front. Laura, Oscar, this has been fascinating because we've been looking so much into how are these futures of design being shaped and made, and what are we doing? Are we yet a discipline? What are our literacies? Are these making methodologies all wrapped up? We're living in such complex times with conditions and complexities that everyone is so aware of. But what is it to put a futures now view on this, the future in the present that's arrived so suddenly? So what does that mean? And just look at the key words that have come up from just these articles here. And you can call out ones to yourself, I guess, audience. If we had a Zoom call out session, we would all be calling out many of these terms as they make sense in our work and as they travel between our collaborations and the very kinds of inquiries we're involved in, whether they're strategic foresight to design fiction or transition design to weak signals that connect with future studies making with anthropologists, if it's a concept car or a futures literacies. A mesh, a web of important matters. That's what we hope these articles will help you all to appreciate. We thank all our contributors and all our reviewers.
Okay, in here you have all the content concerns, meaning the concepts that we have established and we have developed better in the editorial together, Andrew and myself, which are complexity, multiple futures, timeframes, people, attitudes, etc., etc. These are the concerns that we will later on address through the papers. But mainly the idea is here that what you have on screen is the index of this number. And specifically, you have in different colors depending on the typology of the paper. So in green, we have more case studies. In yellow, we have original papers. In blue, we have a state of the art. And in black, we have the pictorials. So it's important also to have like a graphical support to the issue. This is something that we have striven throughout the last three numbers, to have a graphic edition of the number to be easily read and part of the research and the communication of this research. So these content concerns, which are addressed in the editorial, we have structured them in 3 blocks. If you can go ahead, Oscar. Okay, we have structured them in 3 themes. One is the why, the what and the how of design features. Okay, that's the topic what we're dealing today. So why design features? Well, because we are in a complex, like Andrew was suggesting, the complexity, how design features can address complexities with different methodologies. Why? Because why people? Because it's design features and design itself. It's about understanding people. It's about understanding their needs and pushing forward different probabilities and possibilities for them. So it's people that we're dealing about. We're not dealing only with abstract ideas, but it's design and design features for people. Transdisciplinarity, this was a great challenge for us because there are other disciplines that treat features, like features literacies in itself, anthropologists, etc., etc. But design features is kind of a discipline, or is trying to emerge as a discipline itself that can dialogue and can communicate with other disciplines. But it was important that we could make a statement on what design features is for us and for the whole design and scientific community. And of course, purpose. Design features, what for? So why are we using design features? Design features can have many purposes, from a strategic planning to designing an object that can be more market successful, etc., etc. But we're trying to find all through these methodologies a purpose of why using design features. The what is design features? And what are the certain topics that are intrinsic to design features is the idea of multiple features. Whenever we see future as a singular, this is not our field. Our field is futures, because futures means probabilities and opportunities. And what design features does is to open up these different and multiple opportunities and probabilities. What? Timeframes. Timeframes meaning that to understand futures, we need to look into the past, into the present, and to learn about the future. It's not only looking ahead, but looking back and looking at now, so that we can anticipate based on previous people's behaviors, people design objects, etc., etc. So it's really important that we are having the full time frame scope when we research in design features. Attitudes. Attitudes meaning that design futurists, as such, they have this type of mindset towards the future. Being a design futurist is an attitude. It's not only a discipline in itself. And networks also, because whenever we have a scientific topic for discussion, it's important that we create networks. And in this sense, we're really happy to be part with Andrew and UAL and Polimi to be part of a European project called Fuel for Design, that we will soon unveil more about it. So networks to build up network in a knowledge in this transdisciplinary perspective. And how? Obviously, there's a methodology to it, there's a literacies to it, and there's a making to it. Making very linked to design, what design action is. So these are the themes, and we're going to present the papers in this order, the why, what, and how. So I leave you with the why papers, Andrew.
Thanks, Laura. So you can see the first of these by Thomas Markussen, Eva Knuts, and Tao Lengshow from Denmark takes up design fiction, and it's interested in developing a new conceptual foundation for design fiction relating to our actual worlds. The interest here is in how design fiction has potential to foster social change, and key is starting from messy events. And these are colleagues that have been working in this field for quite some time. And I think this paper does do what it says it'll do, which is to draw on literary theory and design anthropology to also try and advance something that is fresh in this format of an original research article in the journal. The second paper is a case study in this section under why, and this is by Andreu Belhusenzes and colleagues. Data control wars, data, extraction, management, exploitation. What are the consequences? Design fiction also is here to observe social expectations, to stimulate social imagination, and to rehearse strategies for technical social transitions. So this is an interesting paper that draws us together to talk about sovereignty and use, participation and collaboration. In contrast, the next case study takes us into a different space. In Tenkua, Carla Pangiawa and Paulino Cogneo are working on design fictions for broken cities, design futures. They're not necessarily the same thing. And this is a group that's a participatory futures working workshop orientation developed by the higher education institution Centro in Mexico City. The purpose here is to work with design strategies to improve community life and neighborliness through participatory experiences and the interesting notion of participatory presence. I hand over to Laura for the...
Thank you, Andrew.
What category? The why category.
The what category? Yes. The one giving a sense of what this is, what design futures is and can be. And the first paper is a state of the art. It's by Lenneke Kuijer. In fact, it's the first state of the art that we are hosting or publishing at Temes de Disseny in these 3 last years. So it's kind of a review. It's democratizing and anticipating everyday futures through critical design. So it's a review of different currents within the design futures field, analyzing them, understanding that we are talking about critical design, speculative design, etc., and giving you a broad spectrum of understanding how design futures can be done and what they are. So it's kind of an interesting paper to address this. The next one, in the what, it's about critical and speculative design and how these disciplines can help democratize and anticipate future everyday life. It's a very interesting project as a case study. It brings in different communities to explore different possibilities. In fact, the title itself, A Legal Town Plan, self-explains about this, and anecdotal speculation of coastal futures. So very interesting paper also to read in terms of participatory methodologies and also about critical and speculative design. And the third one in what, it touches on this gap between academy and industry, where normally in industry we talk about trend forecasting and products and product launch, etc. So this paper, I think it matches very well and balances the industrial perspective on future research and design futures together with a more academical and rigorous way of addressing design futures. So I think it's a quite balanced paper that talks about the sector of concept cars and also unveils a new methodology that can be more understandable by people working in the field of industry, not just academy. And I hand over to you, Andrew, for the first block.
Thank you. The next research article is with my colleagues here in Oslo, part of the Fuel for Design project. It's an early paper from work developed before the global pandemic struck. So I want to point out that the material here, as in other instances, can also be found online in the version of this journal, but also in project websites where there are other resources that people can refer to, as is in this case. Here, the concern is in building a lexicon for design futures literacies connected to other aspects philosophical underpinning frameworks, methods and tools and so on in this project. The interest is to actually show how some of the work has been framed and formed, and how actually language and design is perhaps under-focused, but it's everywhere. And I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm using language to talk about language, but we do mean language in the context of multimodal communication. The interest here is on pedagogy, implications for wider use, policy, and for our emerging literacies together. The next item is a pictorial where Thomas Diaz and colleagues focus on de-objectifying and decolonizing the way we design technologies to make for more inclusive and challenging futures in one sense. Creating harmony is important here between living systems with a focus on building knowledge through the generation of an atlas of weak signals and a methodology and tools to help build connections between local and global. This is very important for us when we're working with prototyping, the staging, if you like, in emergent futures perspectives. And I think the visual character of this article in particular challenge us to think across the articles in this collection, the contributions in the collection. And I encourage you to try and read the articles together and apart and see how they're creating a rhetoric, a set of methodological literacies in their own making. The final one that I will mention is by Ezequiel Pini, which is about, as you will see here, a completely different mode of communicating, working, and aesthetics. The term computer-generated inspiration is in the center here, and I quote, "It embraces the freedom of experimentation and artistic expression, and the goal of inspiring others through unreal imaginaries." So the future is now, the future is never in our grasp, the future is elusive, but the future is in our dreams. Where does this leave us? How does this work help us to think, to make anew, to refashion, to reframe, to refuture? Computer-generated inspiration. Other papers will challenge who is generating which inspiration or which relationship between which entity is generative. That's the summary of the content. And I think you'll see that that is available very easily in this table of contents.
Thank you, Andrew, for the last block. And also, we have a refreshing image from one of the pictorials by Ezequiel Pini, which is next slide. Just to freshen up and taste firsthand what type of imaginary we have in also as supportive of knowledge, and not just as a visual communication, but supportive of knowledge. And having said that, and now that you're all here, also telling you or inviting you to download this next issue, Design Features Now, Literacies and Making. We have a website where you can two websites where you can download Temes de Disseny. On one hand, you have Elisava Research, which is research.elisava.net. So if you click on Temes de Disseny, you'll see that there's a tag saying download. You can download it from there. Remember, it's an open access journal. And if you want to download, read specific papers, etc., we have the full website with all Temes de Disseny numbers, 36 of them. We started some years ago, and in Temes de Disseny, the website is, as you have in the screen, tdd.elisava.net. So you have two options to download and explore and read this number. Okay. And then I leave the digital room for Guy Spelt, who is going to reveal our next topic for our next number. Gim.
Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to keep a little bit more with this number and thank all of you, all the authors for their contributions. Of course, Andrew, Laura, and Oscar for the editorial support. Also the reviewers who've been very helpful. The people at Traduccions Mon for the correction translation. Tiago Majuelos, who designed the cover. This was a special commission, the illustration in the cover that we were also talking with him and to see how we could envision what we have in mind with this design features subject, but we couldn't visualize. He helped us very much, of course, with the Albert Romagos and Esther Arrebola, a wonderful graphic design team who helped us put everything together in this nice volume that I hope you will have in your hands very soon. And yeah, closing for now with number 36. I'm going to present you the...
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Of course.
Because they might not know. I mean, I know that Andrew said it briefly, but I think that they might not know. Maybe they hint, they intuit, they can hint that who are you in this?
That's correct.
What is your role after you thanking everyone? So Guim Spelt is the managing editor of Temes de Disseny. So he's the one behind the curtains, making everything work, telling us what to do and when we need to do it. Without him, this will be impossible to happen. And he's a designer and researcher working at Elizabeth Research. So Guim,
thank you,
after this short introduction, the floor is yours again. Sorry for interrupting.
So, can I interrupt too? Can I interrupt a second too? Just to mention for the audience that maybe we forgot, and since you mentioned Traduccions Mon, this journal is in 3 languages. Yes. So anyone who wants to read it can read it in English, Spanish, or Catalan. That's a really a big statement that we have been keeping for for all these years, and specifically these 3 last numbers as well. And again, also thank Tiago for the illustration. It was a research project in itself. Once you have the number, you will try and figure out what does this illustration mean, which is explained on the credits page, where you will find some information about it. That's it. Sorry about the interruption. Guim.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Andrew, again. And as Oscar said, I will try to introduce to you the new issues topic. As Oscar said, we are changing every year, and this year we're presenting these invisible conflicts, the new terrain of bodies, infrastructures, and information, which will be guest edited by Laura Benitez and Bani Brosadin, both researchers at Elizabeth and other places. So we have a hope that we can create this network of contacts to build a very good number. And quoting their text for the call for authors, the issue will explore the topic of conflict and disobedience in a networked planet. So we are calling for designers, critical technologies, and researchers that they can talk about instability, friction, resistance, counter practices, cultural clashes, and even material conflict. All these keywords are more explained and developed in the call for authors document that you can find now in the Temes de Disseny website, and tomorrow will be published and announced widely through the Elizabeth community. And just a brief note on the timeline, the deadline for the abstract is on November 17th, and the article should be delivered on January 14th. So if you're interested or know somebody who can be interested in this issue, please just write to us or inform or talk to anyone who can be interested in participating. And yeah, I think that's it for number 37. So we should go back to the number 36 with the Q&A session with Laura, Andrew, and whoever may be interested in participating. So I will be reading the chat for any of your questions that then I will translate into.
Can I just say one final thing, which is to say thanks to you at Elisava for pulling this together in the year that the contributors, the editors, the designers, teachers have all been through. I'd really like to commend you for the way you've worked, the consistency with which you have given attention to the work, and the tone that you've managed to keep together in times and deadlines and revisions. So I'd really like to say this is an interesting, imaginary, real, online and print-based journal. And it's in languages that allow people to read from Spanish and Catalan back into English and across them. It's a space that's really worth considering sending something to every year. And I really wish you well with the next issue. And I'd like to know what the one is after that, but that's for another day. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you, Andrew.
I hope we're going to have some questions after all this talk from our side. I guess we can take questions in any of the 3 languages as well.
Yes, we're open to...
Just not to me.
We can translate it, don't worry, Andrew. So if anybody has any questions, just write them on the chat. So we have one question. So it's from Ruben Campillo, who asks, do you approach speculative design concepts in the magazine?
Yes, I would say we do, and several people do in different ways. We have a state-of-the-art paper which is covering notions and practices and perspectives. I think we've got a perspectives question in a couple of the papers. The design fiction work from our Danish colleagues definitely does that. And I think also just the pictorial we ended with at the end is itself a speculative design performative act, an invitation, not a provocation, but an enticement maybe. An invitation to engage. So yes, and I'd be very interested to see what Ruben Campillo makes of what he finds there.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there any more questions?
I think in the question and answers we have.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, so we have Francisco Flores, who's asking, is it possible to go a bit deeper about the concept mindset towards the future?
I can answer that maybe. And he's referring to the attitude. Hi, Francisco. I guess you're referring to the attitude thing that I was mentioning before. I was talking about mindset towards the future from design futurist. If it's a discipline, we need to build on skills, and those skills build up this mindset or this attitude, this way of addressing design and design features. Specific skills that are developed and that can go from a systemic perspective of systemic analysis skills to being able to interact with other people to understand and gather knowledge, like very much in the way that social scientists do. I mean, there's a certain spectrum of skills that build up from futures domains and design domains together, and builds up this way of doing or way of researching towards the future. So mindset is linked to discipline and it's linked to skills. Hope that I did answer your question.
Could I add that it's also linked to a kind of stance or a pose or a positionality, because the mindset is also inframed in the way of working and the attitude that is maybe being challenged by the very activity of making. And that this is so known to people, but at the same time there are surprises, there are challenges, like the title of the next issue. So suddenly we are shifting, we're in a world that is familiar, but the boundaries, the attitudes have to be adjusted. And what's pushing that? What are the forces? Been doing some work on writing about the Arctic today and design fiction, and it took me a long time to write down that nuclear power is the biggest power in a sense. It's, you know, it's hugely present in this changing environment. But what are the attitudes we have to that and melting ice in the same space? It's complex, and it needs us to interrogate these attitudes together. I think very much.
Okay.
I saw there was a question that really looked like it belonged to Oscar.
Yes, it's by Palak Dudani, our colleague, who asks, could you speak a bit more about the atlas of weak signals? How do you connect that with working with features when taking a systemic lens?
Okay, I can answer. I'll be really quick. So the Atlas of Weak Signals, it's mainly your drawing board. It's mainly your space to explore what's there. It's your way of collecting in a relational manner all what can influence you. We always look at this Atlas of Weak Signals as a precursor of what could be your design space. It's more like setting up the coordinates of this multi-scalar or multi-dimensional space that is designing for emerging futures, so we can populate it with things. For us, it's really important that we use this Atlas of Weak Signals as a way to make sense of our reality and position ourselves in relation to it. And once you have that, you can position whatever you want, your own projects, your own ideas, your future interventions, projects that you liked, topics that you have found in internet, articles, whatever you want. So I think that in a way, the Atlas of Weak Signals is the way of framing your position in relation to the futures that you are interested in. That's it.
Good, thank you, Oscar. Laura or Andrew, would you like to add something to it?
Yes, I wonder if I could do something the other way around and ask one of our contributors to say hello to us. And I'm so happy that Leneke is here with us. And if she'd like to just say something about her own contribution here, because I think it's a very interesting piece, and very warm welcome to you, Leneke.
I don't know if we will need to ask David to add her as a presenter.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm doing a Zoom piece of magic without the magic wand in my hands.
I don't know if David can do that.
Not to worry. Let me not push that any further.
Let me know, Oscar.
Yeah, if you can do it, if you can add Leneke, that would be great if she wants to.
Leneke Twens Kwicher. David. And in fact, maybe Leneke wants to answer Ricardo's major question. Kwicher. K-U-I-J-E-R. So I was suggesting...
I've complicated matters. We could...
No, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi, Leneke.
Hi, Leneke. Sorry for that.
Hi.
Literacies at work.
Can you also see me then?
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there you are. Great.
So You wanted me to say something about the paper and also answer the question by Ricardo. Is that what you said?
Yes, that would be lovely.
Okay, I need a reminder of Ricardo's question.
I can read it to you.
Yeah, thank you.
So Ricardo was asking, do you find some specific differences and boundaries between the practices of speculative design, design features, design fictions, and critical design, in particular when organizing the manuscripts of this issue?
Mhm.
Well, the manuscripts, it's on us. But the first question is when you then again.
Yeah, because I haven't organized the manuscripts. Thank you very much for the editors for that. Yeah, so indeed, my paper talks about different forms of critical future engagement in design. And I distinguish thereby design fictions and speculative design. And I mean that there are lots of different definitions of these, but in the review that I did, I made a distinction of design fictions as painting a future from which they take an object that sort of represents or materializes that future in the present. And for speculative design, I saw more of a tendency to work with materials in the present to create alternative futures. So the movement is sort of in the opposite direction, but I think that's contestable, and there are examples where this happens in the other way around. So I hope that answers the question and at the same time says something about my article.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Back to you, Oscar.
Oh, Gim.
Im, do we have more questions? Do we have more comments, or is it? Should we do one last one? Or how much time we have? I don't know how much.
Not much really. But we have 3 more questions, right, Gim?
Im, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Should we do this 3 last questions?
Sounds perfect.
Okay. So Anais Bouvet asks, do you have spoken in the Temes de Disseny about the power of the aesthetic on how designing the features?
Andrew, you want to go ahead, or?
Or if you go, if you like.
Yeah, I think it's a clear example can be the pictorial from Ezequiel Pini, where we use creative and aesthetical tools to generate imaginary scenarios. I think it's one of the strongest breakthrough of technology within the design features field, which is using technology and creative digital tools to go beyond what is expected from us, or beyond our daily presence. And obviously, these creative digital tools are linked to aesthetics and are proposing new aesthetics without the need of physically prototyping, but digitally prototyping. So there's a myriad of options in there. And of course, they are triggering, like Andrew was mentioning before, new imaginaries, new collective imaginaries through aesthetics, or through new unexpected forms, not constrained by real things. So yes, we are addressing that, at least minimum in this pictorial.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then Ruben Campillo asks, do you have any advice on developing a speculative or critical design project which questions important societal and environmental issues, but also yields realistic, actionable solutions?
Yeah, I think this is a very real matter that's taken up increasingly with design fiction. The question is, should the raising and surfacing of problems have the role of providing sets of actionable outcomes, or is that part of a longer, wider phase of work? I've been engaged in the Fuel for Design project with a bunch of colleagues where we do include in the Design Futures Lexicon pointers to some work we've done in design fiction using world making and personas and an imaginary set of settings that work with pastiche and irony. And it's very, very difficult to make these communicative intersections and translate them into policy and into action. But for us, this connects directly to education. And our project looks specifically at working with master's and PhD design students. And this has been something we've done in many different settings. However, this work could be taken into other settings. It could be used with policymakers. It could be used with other communities and organizations. But the problem is, how much time and effort and energy is there to fulfill these within a project and to see them onwards from a critical, speculative, imaginary worlding into effects and actions in the world? But we have an action-oriented framework, a process, philosophy, pragmatist ontology in our Fuel for Design project. And I think it's something that we will be taking up more. And our colleagues in Elisava already embody in a variety of their work. So something there for us to follow up. And I think it's a great question, one that I'd like to see more of us try and answer as we go forward into the future. Thank you, Ruben.
Can I add something in there?
Gim's work as well.
Yes. If I can add to Ruben's questions by answering a little bit more, I think it's important when we talk about realistic, actionable solutions, like the time frame that we were talking about, and the time frame and the sector where you want to see actionable solutions. If we're talking about something that is more systemic, like urban design, for instance, it can take up more time. If we're shorter time production or making things, we can bring those actionable solutions in this alternative present almost right away. So it's important to understand where do you want to impact with your speculative and critical design project. Is it on a more systemic level that is going to be slower? Is it on a more centered sector level, which can be faster? So it's really important to understand where you want to apply this design project.
Okay, thank you. And I think we can have this last question, which it's very open, but maybe you can have some insight about it. It's what's the future for or of designing futures? It's a double question.
Well, first of all, Temes de Disseny, number 36. I should say that. Well, that's a cutting edge of what we are going towards. But Andrew, you can have a go at this.
I think that we are making them and shaping them, but if we're not looking reflexively, critically, creatively at our own changing, emerging literacies and how we're implicit in this, then we will repeat and not change the patterns of modernism and design. So as my colleagues here are talking about, we need to be thinking about refuturing design. And we're talking, as we know, about important issues about decolonizing design, about addressing notions of practices around materials, sustainable futures, long-term systemic change. These show us that we cannot look at these futures separately, but only collectively. We need to continually look at them critically, and we need to do this in a generous and challenging arena of dialogue and critique. And that's also how the making gets made. So these questions are exactly on topic, I would say. And I'd like to see really how everyone, if we had time in the chat, answered that question. in the lexicon of the Design Futures Literacies project, Fuel for Design, we've made a set of activities that might help you and your students to look into some of those questions further. But the real question for us is that we're putting design into Futures Literacies. We are designing Futures Literacies, and we're designing Futures Literacies, where the emphasis goes. So I say there's a three-way question. We're in a volume of questions here, and that's really what's so interesting, that all of these contributors have really tackled in different ways. I hope that also gives a little bit of a suggestion and something with some practice attached to it as well.
Well, Gim, I guess that if we don't have any more questions, we should call it a day. And before we go, I think it would be nice that I stop sharing the screen so they can all see us again. And we can say goodbye to everybody that was here and thank for their attendance. So
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll see you soon.